Before we get today's show started, got to shout out the sponsor of the video, Magic Spoon. Go over to magicspoon.com/Dolphins to get $5 off of your first order of Magic Spoon. It is the best tasting cereal out there on the market, and better yet, it's better for you than any cereal on the market. All you got to do is go over to magicspoon.com/Dolphins to get $5 off of your first order of Magic Spoon. It's 53-man roster projection time, and we're going to run through 1 all the way to 53, starting with Tua Tagovailoa and Jacoby Brissett at the quarterback position. I don't think the Dolphins will have 3 quarterbacks on the roster come Tuesday. I do think that Reed Sinnett will be on the practice squad, and maybe they move him up for a game or 2 here and there. But right now, I think they'll go with 2. I think Myles Gaskins, Malcolm Brown, and Salved Ahmed are squarely on this roster. We'll have a surprise at the running back position at the next graphic, but Myles Gaskins is the guy I wanted to talk about most in the sense that I think he could have a breakout season in this offense. You think about the star power that they added in the offseason, whether that's Will Fuller or Jaylen Waddle. I think that helps Myles Gaskins. Now, the O-line is going to have to play up for him to do that, but I do think 1,400 yards is possible for him. But let me know, over, under, are you taking the over or the under on 14 total 100 yards for Myles Gaskins? I'm going to go slightly over, but it's if he's healthy, right? I think that that's the biggest case for every player in the NFL, but I like Myles Gaskins in the sense of this offense is going to expand a little bit. I think he is the clear running back 1. Yes, Malcolm Brown had an okay stint in the red zone during the preseason a little bit. I think he's going to be the short yardage back, but if we're strictly talking about yards, I think that Myles Gaskins is the clear-cut RB1 and has a chance to go over 1,400 yards. Total yards, I should say, if he's healthy. Next up on the 53-man roster, we got Patrick right there. Didn't see that coming, did you? I know producer Jeremy loves him, winning him a fantasy championship back in the day. I have 4 tight ends on the roster for the Miami Dolphins, and Mike Gesicki leads the way. But the guy I really want to talk about in the tight end position group is Hunter Long. I love him, 3rd-round pick, 81st overall out of Boston College. Love every aspect of his game. Now, is he a little raw? Sure. He needs to grow a little bit, and he dropped a pass in preseason week 3. But overall, I really liked his projectability for this roster when it comes to Hunter Long and making an impact. Maybe not right away, but here maybe in year 2 or 3. And I think that he could really, really use some mentorship from Mike Gesicki. Moving on, got another tight end right there in Carter, but now we're getting into the offensive line portion of things, and this is really where it gets interesting, I know, for everybody. Obviously, Michael Dieter, Robert Hunt, Solomon Kinley, and Austin Jackson make the team, and those are going to be 4 of your 5 starters. The main guy that everybody wants to talk about by far is Austin Jackson, though. You have that draft capital in him in terms of the 18th overall pick in 2020 out of USC. Struggled a bit last season, giving up 4 sacks. You saw a little bit of what he could be against the Falcons, albeit in preseason week 2 and against their second teamers. But overall, I like his projectability, and I like what he could do at the left tackle position. He's just got to live up to that draft capital, and obviously he was going to make the roster. You just want to see him take that next step in year 2. Elsewhere on the offensive line, Jesse Davis and then Liam Eichenberg come in, and you notice 2 guys on there as well that the Dolphins just traded for, and Greg Mance and Greg Little. But the guy I really, really am interested in outside of Austin Jackson on the offensive line, and this guy right here has been getting way too much hate on Dolphins Twitter, social media, everything. Jesse Davis, I think he's a solid right tackle, right? I don't think he's anything special. Do I think he's going to be an all-pro? No. Do I think he's going to be even a Pro Bowler? No. But I don't think he is going to be the reason why your offensive line is bad, and I get it. That is not what you want. You want to protect your franchise quarterback into a long term, but Jesse Davis isn't going to hinder his development per se on that offensive line. I like what he's done at right tackle, and I think he's done a very solid job in the preseason. But hey, let me know which offensive lineman needs to step up the most this year for the Miami Dolphins. I'm pretty sure I know where everybody's going to go with this, but I want to throw another name out there. Austin Jackson is the obvious name, but Robert Hunt has to be in this conversation as well. Talk about draft capital, obviously not on the scale of Austin Jackson, but Robert Hunt got drafted in the 2nd round, right? This guy has got to make the move inward on that line at a very high level to right guard, and hopefully he's not a weakness on the line. He played pretty well. I Did call him a loser in preseason week 2. I thought that he missed one block. Pro Football Focus saw it the other way. But I do like what he does long-term in terms of being at the guard position, and I think it translates better than him being at the tackle position. And being next to Jesse Davis, I think will ease that transition in terms of moving Edward on the line. Elsewhere on the 53-man roster, another offensive lineman right there, but now we're getting into the wide receivers. And this is where Devontae Parker, Jaylen Waddle, and I bet you at the beginning of camp you didn't think Albert Wilson was going to make this roster. Maybe you did, but he was going to be on the bubble. Well, he is on this roster in a firm way right there. There is no doubt about it. He is your wide receiver 3 going into the year. Now, there will be a name that is missing from this 53-man roster, and that is Will Fuller. Reason why? He's suspended week 1. He does not have to count against the 53-man roster limit. So didn't include him on here. He will be on there, and the Miami Dolphins will have to make a move going into week 2 against the Bills. But right now, he is not on this 53-man roster projection, and that's just because, well, you don't have to have him on there right now. Why not keep an extra body on the offensive line, defensive line, wherever you want, and project them into week 1 and then make a decision going into week 2. Next up, we got Jakeem Grant. I kept him on there. I think Matt Collins stays as well, Preston Williams, and maybe the shocker of the whole team is probably Malcolm Perry. And the reason I put Malcolm Perry on there is I think it's still possible you trade Jakeem Grant. Not likely, but I do think there is a possibility if that happens. And I think that Malcolm Perry could be his backup in terms of the replacement, in terms of going out there, returning kicks, whether that's punt or kickoffs. But you won't notice Lynn Bowden on here as well. He is on IR, so he will not count against the 53-man limit. Solid player last year for the Miami Dolphins after coming over from the Raiders. But overall, again, doesn't need to be included in the 53-man roster because he is placed on IR. Speaking of Jaylen Waddle and the wide receivers, though, will Jaylen Waddle lead the NFL in all of rookies? Should have clarified, all rookies in the NFL in receiving yards this year. Type Y for yes, type N for no. You know where I stand when it comes to Jaylen Waddle. I'm going to be spamming that Y button down in the comments. But moving forward on the Dolphins 53-man roster, moving over to the defensive side now, this is where it gets a little bit interesting because I only have 5 guys on that defensive line right here with Christian Wilkins, Ogba, and then you got Davis, Butler as well, who I'm really high on. I love that signing from New England in the offseason in Adam Butler. But I really love what the Dolphins have here on the offensive line, or defensive line, excuse me. Obviously, Ogba's going to stand up a lot of the time. Christian Wilkins needs to make that next step. And Roquan Davis is an absolute stud, in my opinion. But overall, the biggest question is where the sack's going to come from outside of Ogba. You tell me which Dolphin will have the most sacks this season. Again, I'm probably going to go with Emmanuel Ogba because I do think he's an elite pass rusher in the NFL. But I'm curious to see if you have anybody else stepping up on that defensive line and maybe supplanting a guy that had 9 sacks in 2020 for the Miami Dolphins. And maybe one of those guys could be the rookie who comes in on the next portion of the 53-man projected roster, and that is Jaelan Phillips. Now, you have Jerome Baker, you have McKinney as well, and you have maybe the most underrated guy on the entire defense in Landon Roberts. But Jaelan Phillips could be that guy that if he takes that next step as a rookie, and hopefully he does, opposite of Emmanuel Ogba, he could potentially be up in that, 6-7 sack range, which you would hope from a rookie would get him in that, maybe Defensive Rookie of the Year conversation. But first and foremost, he's got to stay on the field and be healthy. Rounding out the linebackers, though, you got Van Ginkel, who, again, one of the most underrated players in the NFL. And speaking of underrated as well, Sam McGlavin right there alongside Brennan Scarlett. I really love the linebacking core of the Miami Dolphins for the simple fact of its versatility. And that's something you don't see a lot of when it comes to linebackers. But it did take a hit, right? The linebacking core did take a hit earlier this week as Vince Beagle, who didn't play in 2020, will be out for the season. He was placed on IR, unfortunately, so that does take a hit to the linebacking depth, but I do think that's why Sam McGlavin, other than his play in the preseason, is firmly on the 53-man roster come Tuesday afternoon when you have to submit those if you're the Miami Dolphins. Talking about the secondary now, arguably the best secondary in football right here when you think about it. I know there's some others out there that maybe have the Ravens, maybe the Rams. I think the Dolphins have to be in that conversation as well. You have Xavien Howard. You have Byron Jones. Nick Needham, love him. Justin Coleman, and then obviously you got Noah Igbenogany as well, who needs to step up in his second year out of Auburn. But the two main guys that need to be talked about are arguably two of the top 5 best corners in the NFL. But who will have more interceptions this year between those two guys? Will it be Xavien Howard? Will it be Byron Jones? Or, hey, maybe someone else leads the Dolphins this year, and type O down in the comments below. Would love to see that, especially if Howard and Jones keep up their outstanding play moving forward. Because you think about it, who else in the NFL has a duo like this outside of maybe the Rams, maybe the Ravens? I think Xavien Howard and Byron Jones really are the best 2 corners in the NFL in terms of a duo. But if you have somebody else step up and potentially lead this team in interceptions this year, that I think just escalates your defense even more. And I would love to see maybe Noah take that next step into his sophomore season, mostly because you used the draft capital on him, right? You're in the first round right there, and you moved up in terms of trying to get the corner. Was supposed to be one of those guys that maybe had an instant impact in the slot, but just hasn't produced so far for the Miami Dolphins in terms of having one of the worst graded rookie ratings for a DB in the NFL if you listen to Pro Football Focus. But overall, again, Xavien Howard and Byron Jones are an elite duo, and if you have somebody that leads the team outside of those two in interceptions, you're a top 5 defense in the NFL, and I don't think it's a question. Moving on to the safety portion of the projected roster, you have Eric Rowe, obviously Holland, the rookie out of Oregon, Jason McCourty going into his 13th season in the NFL, Brandon Jones, and then you got Jamal Perry. That's going to round out the 53-man roster outside of special teams, right? So I think, again, you're moving forward, and you have one of the best kickers in the NFL in Jason Sanders. Like it or not, it's the truth, right? That's just simple and plain when it comes down to it. And again, this is my 53-man roster, okay? This is not what the Dolphins put out. This is what I expect to happen on Tuesday. Go ahead in the comments and grade me. A, B, or C on my 53-man projections. Call me out. I know you love doing it down in the comments, but grade my 53-man roster projections for the Miami Dolphins roster in 2021, A, B, or C, down in the comments.